In 2019, I served as Deputy Policy Director for a presidential campaign. Working on a campaign is insane and thrilling. Imagine a startup on steroids where reporters watch every move. You're racing towards a stressful deadline called Election Day. Each staffer is responsible for a massive amount of work, and lots of work is done by volunteers. I started as an unpaid advisor. After several months, I became the first full-time policy lead. My job involved building a team, briefing the candidate, and developing plans for dozens of issues. One issue the candidate deeply cared about was racial equity. One night, the campaign leadership called. They said, "Hey, we want a racial justice plan to be our first major release. Can you take it on?" I had such mixed feelings about leading this effort. I'd never directly experienced racism. I thought, I don't know the solutions, and thinking that I do would be so presumptuous. But this was also a chance to use my power to do something. As a white person, it is my responsibility to fight for racial justice. Over generations, my family and I have benefited from racism. So it's absolutely on us to help fix it. The question was how? How could I design an equitable process? Could the campaign have a real impact? So even if we lost, we could push other candidates to think bigger. I'm here to share 5 lessons I learned from this process. Lesson 1, make time. I want to give you a sense of how policies often develop on campaigns. Campaigns can assign an issue to whomever has time, and the staffer will write a few pages of high-level points, or they'll copy and paste research from a think tank, outsource to an expert, or play it safe and not release anything. But when it comes to racial justice, we needed to make time. When everyone is busy, it's easy to avoid the hardest work. So we started spending less time on other projects to make room for this one, and planned for lots more calls with the candidate. I had no idea how this process would go, but to do it right, we needed to make time. Lesson 2. More voices. To create an equitable process, I figured we'd need a lot of voices involved. I'm grateful that 2 rock stars agreed to help. Nina Smith was our traveling press secretary, and Jose Morales, our national constituency director. They're both people of color with backgrounds in policy and government. And they share many of the lived and intersectional experiences with the people we hoped to serve with the plan. Then we invited other extraordinary experts to join us. Portia on civil rights, Aaron on housing, Chike on entrepreneurship, Ashwin and Andres on health, and many others. They are inspiring leaders of color, deeply committed to these issues. Led by their vision, together we set our sights high. We wanted to develop a plan as bold as the Marshall Plan that rebuilt Europe after the Second World War. Our goal? A roadmap to dismantle centuries of racist systems across society. Lesson 3, listen. Then we had to get to work and actually write a bold plan. The team started listening to so many people's stories. Within a month, we talked to over 60 activists, scholars, and organizations, formerly incarcerated individuals fighting to restore their right to vote, academics studying the racial wealth gap, even the direct descendants of Frederick Douglass. The more we listened, we heard creative ideas, and we saw our gaps. For example, we talked to leaders in Flint, Michigan as they rebounded from the water crisis. It became clear we needed to be a lot stronger on environmental justice. So we added policies like equitable disaster relief and making sure the EPA considers environmental justice in all of its decisions. Listen broadly, deeply, and with humility. Lesson 4, stay engaged. This work can feel daunting. Systemic racism runs so deep across our institutions and policies. The kinds of solutions we were seeking were how to attack the racial wealth gap, reduce incarceration, pass health policy grounded in anti-racism. The more the scale of these challenges sunk in, the more I realized that I needed to stay engaged. It's easy to go vote, protest every once in a while, and then turn away. Staying engaged also meant educating myself. Sitting in meetings, I realized, wow, there is so much history I'm missing. So late at night, I do deeper dives on redlining, cash bail, reparations, and many other issues our experts were bringing to the table. To be an ally, I needed to stay engaged and constantly educate myself. Lesson 5, be accountable. Lots of organizations release diversity and inclusion plans. They make commitments. But what is the plan for accountability? In our case, it meant making sure that racial equity was a huge part of every plan. For example, our disability policy was laser-focused on equity. We addressed school suspension rates, voter suppression, unemployment. All of these disproportionately impact people of color with disabilities. But as hard as we tried to center racial equity, there were plenty of times I could have done better. For example, at the beginning of the campaign, I tracked diversity across our volunteer teams. I wanted to ensure equitable recruitment and participation. But when I got busy, I fell behind on this effort. It's easy to stop following through when we're crushed with work. It's easy to get discouraged when we get called out or make a mistake. But there is no excuse. Allyship isn't a mindset. It's actually doing the work. We ended up naming our platform the Frederick Douglass Plan, a comprehensive investment in the empowerment of Black America. And by we, I mean the dozens of leaders of color who drove this vision. While there were lots of reactions to the plan, it shared bold ideas and spotlighted racial justice as a campaign priority. I hold on to one reaction from none other than Stacey Abrams, who said the Douglass Plan should be front and center in 2020 and beyond. Sure, our candidate lost, but other candidates adopted our recommendations. Some were even carried out on day one of the Biden administration. So, why am I sharing this story of my learning process? Because I want all of us to show up for racial equity. As you move into senior roles, your leadership especially matters. Our generation is facing so many complex challenges. We need to think about racial equity as we tackle problems from climate change to income inequality. So, let's make time. Let's bring in more voices. Let's listen and stay engaged. And let's hold ourselves accountable. Otherwise, the cracks in our democratic project will keep growing. Moving forward, let's be as bold and transformational as this moment demands us to be.